Today's terrorists have a new way to get around the Bank Secrecy Act: cryptocurrency. Last year, an estimated $20 billion in illicit crypto transactions funded every kind of dangerous criminal. North Korea has funded at least half its missile program.
I've always been deeply opposed to crypto, Bitcoin, etc. You pointed out the only true use case for it is criminals, drug traffickers, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, and that is a use case because it is somewhat anonymous, not fully, and because you.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking the channel out today. My name is Agabus. This is your financial education channel. Let's get right into it. Now, at first glance, listening to Elizabeth Warren and other senators and politicians speak about crypto regulations, my first thought would be, oh no, they're after our money. But after thinking more about it, they're from a different money generation. The generation that came from after getting off the gold standard and being a part of this fiat monetary standard, where the fiat money, you have to have control to know where everything is going. Under a new system which Bitcoin is trying to adopt, it's more about freedom and it's more about the open market creating money, not a government-controlled money. So if some of these new regulations, which we'll talk about in just a second, do come through, I'm not as concerned because the younger generation is heavily involved in cryptocurrencies, and as they mature and age, they will be the legislators of years to come. So I don't think some of these bills will have much sway 10 or 15 years from now. However, I understand how it can be concerning for some folks listening how the government is coming after your Bitcoin. Well, let's get right into it. This is from CoinGape.com. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren targets crypto in new regulatory bill. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren has introduced a bill to curb the alleged misuse of cryptocurrencies in illegal activities. The legislation, backed by members of the Banking Committee, of course, focuses on addressing issues such as money laundering, drug trafficking, and sanctions evasion facilitated through digital currencies like Bitcoin. Elizabeth Warren tightens crypto regulatory grip. The bill, presented by Warren, proposes stringent regulatory frameworks for the cryptocurrency sector. It seeks to extend the Bank Secrecy Act to include more comprehensive reporting requirements. These include enhanced Know Your Customer norms and mandates to file reports on transactions involving unhosted wallets. I'm curious, and I assume this means cold storage wallets, not hot storage, maybe on Coinbase or MetaMask. Now, one other thing when it comes to these Bank Secrecy Acts and some of the regulatory filings is that if you go to a bank and you deposit more than $10,000, the bank is required to write up a script that has who you are, where the money comes from, and that gets reported back to the government so that they can follow the money, again, if it's more than $10,000. Know Your Customer is a lot of, some would argue, invasive questions, and some would say it makes sense when it comes to who you are, what your assets are, and your income is, to make sure that you have an understanding or idea of what you're buying and selling. Most companies in the traditional space, Fidelities, Vanguards, etc., will have some sort of Know Your Customer questions before you open an account, so that's not too concerning when you apply it to the crypto space. But I know there's a lot of folks in the crypto world that like to stay and keep things anonymous, and going back to the freedom argument. This move reflects a growing concern over using cryptocurrencies to finance illicit activities. Warren highlighted the urgency of the issue, stating, quote, "The Treasury Department is making clear that we need new laws to crack down on crypto's use in enabling terrorist groups, rogue nations, drug lords, ransomware gangs, and fraudsters to launder billions in stolen funds, evade sanctions, fund illegal weapons programs, and profit from devastating cyber attacks." Now, when I look at this and I see it say fraudsters to launder billions in stolen funds, I wonder if that has anything to do with FTX Sam Bankman-Fried, who, oddly enough, did funnel quite a bit of money to politicians. So I might agree with that statement that we should have better regulations so that some of these companies can operate here locally instead of going overseas to the Bahamas. Now, crypto legislation could impact Bitcoin's spot ETF applications coming through. The bill has garnered support from various organizations, including the Bank Policy Institute, Massachusetts Bankers Association, and Transparency International US. Never heard of these folks. These endorsements come from a cross-section of financial, legal, and consumer protection groups, underscoring the perceived necessity for more robust oversight of the cryptocurrency market. One would argue that the SEC and other agencies are there to help protect the individual or the investor so that there's not a bunch of fraudsters and snake oil salesmen that are out there. However, I would argue that their main job is for transparency. So if somebody wants to invest and put their money somewhere, they've got a pretty good idea of where that money is going. 9.5 times out of 10, the crypto folks I talk to have a very good understanding of why they're getting involved in cryptocurrencies. They have done plenty of hours of research, in particular around Bitcoin and the argument of why we need some sound or hard money. So I understand the background. However, for the old school, do your own research, which I totally promote, do your own research, that those who have done the research into cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, they can walk circles around some regulators and probably walk circles around some financial advisors as well. Let's continue. However, the proposed legislature arrives at a critical junction for the cryptocurrency industry, particularly for Bitcoin. The bill could have significant implications with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, which is poised to approve the U.S. first spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund next month. That's right, January. Approval of the ETF is expected to trigger a surge in both institutional and retail demand for Bitcoin. Now, the approval could be first with ARK Invest in January. I believe it's the 10th or the 11th. If that one fell through, then I would look forward to the BlackRock filing here in March. The SEC's website got a makeover recently, adding a new section called Crypto Assets. Marty Party from Twitter raises questions about how the SEC views and labels cryptocurrency. Could this mean they're leaning towards seeing them as assets rather than securities? After all, this crucial distinction holds immense importance in regulatory oversight and legal categorization. We spoke about this in a previous video. Securities. Sometimes the definition of security makes sense toward cryptocurrencies, but there's that one last question that everybody seems to be hung up on, and I think the current Ripple lawsuit is currently debating on as well. It's very important that the regulatory system clearly distinguishes between assets and securities. The SEC is mostly in charge of overseeing securities, the trading, and the platforms that help them happen. As a result of this new classification, the SEC's direct control over crypto assets may be limited since they're not typically regulated by the SEC. However, he still doesn't believe the SEC can give up, especially since Coinbase and numerous other trading platforms are being sued by the SEC. Expert dilemma here. What do you think is going to take place, and how do you perceive this information when you hear some of the regulators and politicians coming after your Bitcoin transactions? Are you concerned, or are you not as concerned, knowing that in the long term, younger folks will mature and get older, and those will start to become politicians, and the politicians would start to make some laws more inclusive toward cryptocurrencies? Would love to know your 2 cents. Thank you so much, as always, for listening and chiming in today. Make sure you stay informed, stay inquisitive, and stay subscribed for more. We'll see you tomorrow.